Thank you very much, Jutta, for this kind introduction. It's a little bit strange to speak here. It's really like a foul effect. I try to manage it. And as one of the first speakers, I hesitate to start for avoiding the topic of death. So maybe it would be better to speak at the last section of the conference now. But I can assert, and maybe I will disappoint you, that I will discuss, that I'm going to discuss this topic of the death of an impresario very soberly and non-dramatically. So here are my 4 points. I will begin with, as a background, to a revival of public opera performances in Rome. Then I will introduce to you the impresario, a civil impresario in Rome, his struggling theatre owner, and my last and main point is the reconstruction of his last season, 1741, in Rome. When the Teatro Capranica, managed by owner Federico Capranica, reopened its doors to theatregoers in 1711, a long period of 12 years in which public opera performances were prohibited in the capital city of the Papal State came to an end. During this period, as political restrictions caused by the still ongoing war of the Spanish succession, opera performances were only allowed in private theatres or festival rooms with families, while the genre of the oratorio and baroque open-air celebrations benefited from the aforementioned theatre genre in Berne. The polity formed under Pope Clement XI initiated a revival of opera performed in public theatre buildings with a technical apparatus, a standard of scene apparatus, at its best to attract not only the noblemen and diplomats and the rich protégé in town, but also a large audience who paid for tickets. The tradition of a rich landscape of smaller and greater theatres without a so-called first stage in town. This is really a situation in Rome that we have no first stage and no so-called theatre, because the Pope, as you all know, didn't need the theatre for his religion. So this landscape of smaller and greater theatres, which might have competed against each other for one season while being restricted or closed for the next, wasn't that long. Only in the 1790s he find three theatres performing opera more or less regularly: the Teatro Tordinona, Teatro Capranica, and the smaller one, the Teatro della Pace. Thus, it was a very young and then early interrupted tradition of a vivid operatic culture. Its revival in the following decades of the 18th century, however, was steady and continuous. In fact, it became more than that. As the history of reopenings of Roman theatres tells us, there was a successive boom of opera, although all performances were dependent on the granting of license from the Governatore di Roma, which were not automatically conceded in the Holy Years during papal transition, expectations as they were in 1733. 1 year before, for instance, an opera goer could have seen 6 different productions during the Carnevale, a rich and competing opera culture in that year almost as abundant as that in carnival centers in Naples or Venice. Let's have a look to the growing theatrical topography in Rome after 1711. We see the reopening of 2 theatres, the Capranica and della Pace. And you see after this in brackets also the family who built the theatre. Then a new Teatro Alibert, enlarged a few years later. Then the second theatre built by the family Capranica, the Teatro delle Juvan, Teatro Argentina from the Counts Forza Cesarini, and here at the last, the reopening of the Teatro Tordinona. And we can, if we widen this perspective to other cities of the Italian countries, then we see that we have this boom of theatre openings, of important theatres, although in these decades. The story of the rebuilding, so now let's get back to Rome. The story of the rebuilding of the Teatro Alibert, 3 years after its inauguration, offers the most demonstrative example of the boom of opera and the astonishing investing power of the Alibert family. What we can grasp in the history of the building and studying the dedicato, the dedication of the libretto Amore e Maestà from 1720, is that Antonio Alibert did allargar le sue mura, so he enlarged the walls of the theatre, but indeed this does not clarify what happened in sufficient detail. The crown, attached to a contract of purchase, Antonio Alibert bought a small adjacent building, here marked in green, in order to demolish it, indicates the real dimension of these buildings. Inside the theatre was marked in red. Became the largest stage in town with 7 tiers and of 32 boxes. Comparing different versions of the famous perspective plan by Giovanni Battista Falda, we get further impressions by seeing the only known image from the First Theatre of 1717 and the new one of 1720 with its bridge over the Via Margutta, which was constructed additionally for transferring the entrance to the broader Via del Babuino. Without it, the carriage thousands of people could not have run from the small alleys right to the building. And this passage is also documented in Giovanni Battista Nolli's famous Rome of 1741. So this is the more striking example for this boom of opera building in Rome. Let's come to our impresario. As we have seen from the scheme, the old families involved in the opera business, Alibert, Capranica, saw themselves confronted with new competitors. Count Sforza Cesarini, the still existing Teatro Argentina, close to his now demolished Palazzo. There was also an active civil player, the lawyer Giuseppe Conti, in whom we see 4 famous drawings by Pier Leone Ghezzi. He became one of the most influential impresario until his death in 1741 and took responsibility for at least 24 premieres of Dramica Musicology in 4 theatres of the town. This was a unique activity with regard to other biographies of impresario in this period. Furthermore, as diverse types of documents reveal, before producing opera at the Teatro della Pace in 1721 for the first time, Folli was a financier of renovation of the stage in 1717, so simultaneous to the opening of Alibert's first theatre, and he bought to a huge extent boxes from it. It's very likely that he became the owner of the theatre, not of the building but of the theatre. Not only do the dedications, or the dediche, of his production there prove his identity as the owner. So we could read, for instance, phrases like "Questo mio teatro," so at my theatre, but also an interesting wording in a contract he signed as a borrower, which you see at the other side, on the left side. Faliconti is described here as follows, I quote, Signor Polvino Faliconti, su pretenso iure et interesse come moderno impresario e rispettivamente compratore del detto teatro, so a modern impresario. The theater of his career, he managed it through also through subcontractors for prose theatre or puppet shows, burattini, at the time when he signed contracts of direction at larger theatre houses. For 3 seasons, he produced at the Teatro Capranica. A contract over 6 seasons committed him at the new Teatro Argentina from 1732 onwards, a direction that was interrupted by unforeseen cancellations of licenses in 1733, with which the Camera Apostolica reacted to a controversy of high diplomats who claimed to exist in the Roman theatres. It's really like a surrogate war of these high diplomats, also known as the Guerra dei Paquetisti, the war of the box holders. The political background here is of course the change of government at the Kingdom of Naples, so the end of the Austrian rule and the installation of the Spanish, the child of the Spanish Charles. The response to this controversy of the box holders was the reopening of the Teatro Tordinona, which you see at the top of the map, really as the idea of a state theatre in which it was only possible to rent a box during one evening and not for the whole season. And only there it was permitted to produce opera, and it is precisely here that we find Fali Conti once again as impresario for some seasons. In 1971 he managed the Stagione di Carnevale once again at the Teatro Argentina and died right between the first and the second premiere. Although regrettable, it reveals an unexpected chance for opera scholars to shed light on his activities as an impresario, as we will see now. So I come to my third point with the owner. The contract that was signed in 1731 by Giuseppe Cesarini and Fali Conti for the management of the new Teatro Argentina was, on the one hand, the basis of a long-time collaboration between the theatre and the impresario, but on the other hand, it caused also judicial conflicts in the forthcoming years. Indications about the reasons of this dispute were hard to find. What is clear is that the conflicts referred mostly to the first season, because the next full opera season was only 6 years later, when the exclusive rights of the Teatro Tordinona to produce Gianni per Musica fell through permanently. A supplemental contract between both sides, starting in August 1737, the way for carrying on the partnership. Payments not executed by Fali Conti were assumed by the Count, and in return he was allowed to contract other impresarios or produce pro theatre with intermezzi musicali, whereas Fali Conti was the only one to stage opera. Despite not knowing all the details of these conflicts, it seems that the operative point was money and the question of taking it and spending. For instance, the question of paid exactly what for the painter Domenico Villani when he was commissioned to repair boxes, so a part of the theatre building, or to repair old sets, or to fabricate totally ones, which remained after the season all in the possession of the theatre owner, so of Count Sforza Cesarini. Even though the Teatro Argentina finally saw new stagings from 1739 onwards, with Fali Conti as its impresario, the conflicts were still ongoing, and so we have to suppose the different creditors of Fali Conti still lived. When Fali Conti died, Sforza Cesarini, as his major creditor, was the leading figure of a group of persons who tried to be reimbursed. The fact that his private house was confiscated by judicial officials a few days after his death allows us to look directly upon Fali Conti's desk, where he'd signed the existing inventory, more than 90 pages long, is a rare opportunity to investigate his preparatory works. So I come to my last point. This inventory serves now as a kind of basis for the reconstruction of the planning of his last season. Besides a lot of other information regarding his household, so he was also has a rich collection of paintings, we find an almost complete set of contracts with the artists of the 49th season, indirect sources indeed, but a valuable substitute for the lack of an account book, which wasn't found for Fali Conti until now. Appropriate to the standard of that time, two productions were given at the Teatro Argentina. The first, composed by Giuseppe Scarlatti, was an unusual year of a textbook entitled Dario by Giuseppe Baldanza. Unusual because normally in Rome there were no premieres of textbooks that came from other cities and were reused and rewritten textbooks. The second premiere was the well-known subject of Astianate, once performed at the Teatro in 1719, now composed by Niccolò Iomelli, who the Roman audience already knew from the last season. The contracts with the singers and musicians in the inventory were according to the standard contracts of one season, including one fee for two productions, and only the main information is given, the amount and the date the contract was signed. The following overview starts with the singers. You see the 6 singers of the season, then follows the list of musicians, and on the other side the librettist and the 2 composers. So many observations could be made. For instance, that the amount of the singer's fee are absolutely compared to those of the Teatro Alibert, Teatro della Dame, 10 years earlier. We know this because we know there we have the account books of the Teatro delle Dame from the year 26 onwards. Now it's around about 800 scudi. This is a fee of castrati like Farinelli or Gaetano Berenstadt, and here it's absolutely comparable. The star of this cast, soprano castrato Ventura Rocchetti, had a sort of guarantee in his contract, noticing the hint that the 1,000 scudi he earned were, I quote, "assicura sopra gli palchetti del medesimo teatro affittati." So the rental of some boxes served as a guarantee for his fee. While the cast of performers is completely obvious that the orchestra is not represented in its full dimension. Only 12 members are mentioned in comparison with the orchestra of the Teatro delle Dame. This was by 33 up to 35 musicians, so we can suppose that maybe it's only the half of the orchestra. And some instruments which should be present are missing in this list, so like the horns and 1 or 2 cembali. What is also interesting is the time frame indicated by the dates of the contract's signing, which shows the very early contract of Jomelli, concluded right after the last season. So this was absolutely the standard and this indication of his earlier success. And the one of Scarlatti, Giuseppe Scarlatti, which is not a member of the famous Scarlatti family, this was only a few weeks before the opera's premiere. So exactly during the rehearsals, when we can imagine that the rehearsals start at the 1st December, it was signed during this period. So to this fact I would like to draw attention. Not only is the very late of Scarlatti striking, but also his lower fee in comparison with Jomelli's. Jomelli earned 300 scudi, it's the same fee Luigi or Nicola Porpora, for example. And Scarlatti got 2.5. Something must have gone wrong, or at least happened unexpectedly while planning the two productions. Considering the logic of the arrangement of stagioni as applied many times, especially in contracts from the second half of the 1800s, whereby the first production is always the more chancy one with the more attractive artists, while the second or third premiere is more conventional, which allows space off the risks in case the first one turns out to be a fiasco. So in the later repertoire system, we know this kind of opera is named opera di ripiego. We see indications that this unwritten rule was already enforced in this case and in this period. Regarding the atypical Roman premiere of the libretto Dario, compared with the mentioned Scarlatti libretto and the already known composer Jomelli, the logic seems to be in good order. But why the late contract with a small fee for Giuseppe Scarlatti? With solution a few pages later within the inventory, finding 2 contracts that were not fulfilled. So I would like to draw your attention to the second one. Altra consimile apoca del signor Davide Perez, maestro di cappella, che doveva mettere in musica la prima opera e non è venuto. So Davide Perez didn't come. Scarlatti was definitely second quality and a fill-in. Faliconti planned the first opera with Davide Perez, who had his success at the Teatro di San Carlo at Naples a few months before, like always on November the 4th, and should have been now the debut in Rome. With him and the new libretto of Dario, a highly attractive, but also risky first production was intended, followed then by a more secure one. Perez did not because he went back to Palermo, where he met obligations as new maestro di cappella, and later, we know this, he went to Lisboa. We can imagine that the movement of Perez reached the Impresario Faliconti probably as recently as November, so that he was in great need for an alternative. So it became the great chance of Giuseppe Scarlatti, who was present in Rome after having composed his first opera seria at the Teatro Capranica the last season. So the same case like Jomelli, but it's interesting that the poor Giuseppe Scarlatti didn't sign a new contract, but now he was in the right place at the right time on the job, and he was really like a fair player because he didn't ask for higher fee, knowing absolutely that the impresario was in great need. Thanks to this close look to strategic planning by Impresario, we see one main principle at work which could be understood as general already in this period of the opera market. The thought of its makers to offer a mixture of old and new artists and operas, or libretti, which could attract an audience without disappointing them. This audience definitely had to be interested in buying tickets and thus financing the ruling market system with its increasing civil protagonists like the impresario Pulvini Faliconti, who, and that I would like to mention at my last scheme, Metastasio, characterized as an ortolano di Parnaso, talking about the different work of producing opera. So he is described as a gardener of the Mount Parnas. These aspects of the opera business influenced the history of opera to a degree which should not to be belittled. So my argument is that the rules of the free market are strong work also in this situation. The performances were in many regards dependent on the control and participation of the ruling power of noble families and sovereigns. Thank you very much for your attention.